Welcome back to Ask Steve Judd. My name is Sue Brayne, and today Steve and I, well, mainly Steve, is talking about the drama of the Scorpio-Sagittarius cusp, which involves the very last 29th degree of, or we call it the anaretic degree, of Scorpio and 0 degrees Sagittarius. So, Steve, why is this Scorpio-Sagittarius cusp so poignant?
29, it's really weird, Sue, because I find people who are born with the sun or the moon at the very first half a degree of 0 degrees of a sign, or the last half a degree of 29 degrees of the sign, to be far more representative of that sign than people born with the sun or the moon in the middle of the sign. And I've still yet to work out the why that should be. It's also worth noting that the sun goes round, to our eye, the sun goes through the ecliptic. It travels through 360 degrees in 365 days. But the sun and the full moon, because they appear to be both the same size, and if they didn't, we wouldn't get eclipses, but that's another story. They are the same size to our naked eye, and they are both half a degree wide. So when someone says they're born on a cusp, no, they're not. They're one or the other, but it's quite common for people to be born with the sun in last half of 29 degrees. So a little part of the sun will be in the next sign, but the center will still be in the 29 degrees. Yeah. And it's not just the 29 Scorpio. 29 Scorpio has something, it is something of the, if I say it's dark, that gives the wrong impression. There's certainly an element of a fatedness about it. And many people with planets at 29 Scorpio do carry an energy which could be described as arcane, esoteric, or basically spooky. But then at 29 degrees Pisces, you've got Fomalhaut, the star. At 29 Leo, you've got Regulus, one of the great royal stars of the East. At 29 Taurus, you've got the Pleiades, which the Arabs used to call the degree of blindness. So 29 degrees is common. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there at 29 degrees, and I find it fascinating.
Do you think there is the sense of the 29 degrees, something is ending, or there's a sense of mastery over something during this lifetime?
I think that's a really good analogy, and both apply. Both apply. But it also can be said that 0 degrees of a sign is also it's got a similar but different energy in that it's the start, the launch, the beginning, and it's full of exuberance. And I'm going to show you a couple of charts in a minute, based on historic astrology, that really demonstrate this. As you, and I'm sure many of the listeners will be aware, in the last week or two, there's been this really big Sun-Mars conjunction in the sky. And it started at around about 20 degrees of Scorpio, and it's going to run through to about 9 degrees of Sagittarius. It was at its strongest 2 or 3 days ago, around 27, 28 degrees, which is why some astrologers predicted trouble for Joe Biden, because his sun's at 27 degrees, but that didn't, as far as we know so far, didn't happen. And it got me thinking, well, what's happened before? What's happened before when stuff like this has happened? So I'm going to show you the listeners a couple of quick charts, and ignore the titles, because I showed them to my students last night, and I did it as a guessing game. Here's a mystery chart, what happened at this time? And the first one is obvious because of the location and the date. So let's put the first chart up. This was set for November the 22nd, 1963, 60 years and 2 days ago, at midday 30 in Dallas. And this is the moment that President Kennedy was assassinated. The sun was at 29¾ degrees of Scorpio. And the moon was just beginning a conjunction to Saturn, and Saturn was on the ascendant in Aquarius. When Saturn is on the ascendant, especially when it's just risen and it's in the 12th house, this is seen as a very difficult anti-authoritarian stance with challenges to all different types of authority, whether it's father, teacher, God, or employer.
And it's in Aquarius as well, isn't it?
Yes. And so note that the moon is just beginning to conjunct Saturn, and that the sun is at 29 Scorpio. If I change this chart around and instead show you a chart from less than 24 hours later, then we've got this chart. This is a chart for 16 minutes and 20 seconds past 5 in the evening in London on the 23rd of November 1963, 60 years and 1 day ago. And it is the start, the very first broadcast of Doctor Who, which is celebrating its 60th birthday as we speak. And although there's only 24 hours between them, the sun has moved from Scorpio into 0 degrees of Sagittarius. The moon, which was just beginning a conjunction to Saturn, is now leaving conjunction to Saturn. And Saturn in the Kennedy chart was sitting on the ascendant. Saturn in the Doctor Who chart is sitting on the midheaven. And when Saturn's on the ascendant, it's much more onerous, challenging, especially when young. But Saturn on the midheaven gives longevity, whether it is in your career, in your physical body, in your age. It gives the durability and longevity. And of course, Doctor Who's been going a long time. So it's not just the shift from Scorpio into Sagittarius, although that's a big part of it. It's also the positions of Saturn and the moon in these two charts. And one of these charts traumatized the world. I remember it as a child. The second one, well, it also traumatized me as a child because it gave birth to the hiding behind the sofa, Nick.
Steve, I was behind the sofa as well.
So was I. The Daleks and the Cybermen in the 60s were terrifying to an 8-year-old child. But it also filled the universe, filled our world with hope because interstellar people coming to save the Earth from monsters. Yay! You know.
And today, just to feed into that, there has been a report that the highest ever energy cosmic ray ever has been detected hitting Earth.
What's the betting? There's a TARDIS behind it somewhere.
I hope so, don't you? And are you a little friendly person from another planet? But it's interesting, all of these things that sort of synchronizing.
Well, it is synchronistic because as the Sun-Mars conjunction in the sky comes up to the Kennedy assassination, so a Secret Service agent who's been keeping quiet for 60 years and is now approaching his death turns around and says, there was a third bullet, I've got it. And it's the magic bullet theory. So it kind of knocks spots off the conspiracy, the non-conspiracy theories. At the same time, this all came about because yesterday morning, there was a report on the BBC about, it's Doctor Who's birthday today. Doctor Who started at 5:15 p.m. on the 23rd of November. And I did a bit of research and realized that it actually started 80 seconds later than that because BBC delayed the start of the broadcast for 80 seconds to give an update on the assassination of Kennedy. So it was like astrology in action from 60 years ago to the present day. Transpose this into the present day, Sun conjunct Mars at the end of Scorpio is very dynamic, assertive, direct, confrontational even, potentially confrontational. On the positive side, it would be assertive and projective. On the negative side, it would be confrontational and aggressive. And in recent times, we've seen the right-wing politics in Slovakia and very recently Argentina and Holland, big lurches to the right. Now, I'm not political. I'm an environmentalist at heart, and I really despise extremism of all types, whether it's left or right. But history shows us that every time there's a Saturn-Neptune conjunction or opposition in the sky, there's a lurch to the left. And there's a Saturn-Neptune conjunction coming up at 0 degrees of Aries in early 26, which is, I suggest, going to push the whole world towards, not so much towards the left, but it's going to really, it's going to bring in, I hope, a new wave of healthy attitudes towards community, communal living, social responsibility, because we can't move forward unless we take all the impoverished and disenfranchised people with us.
Yeah, I think it's the social responsibility, isn't it? That particularly,
yes,
that energy is, that's what we need to work with.
Yes, so it does worry me that what happens before that might be a little bit more than a little bit difficult.
Pokey at the moment, isn't it? Let's face it. I'm just wondering, how can we, with the shift coming, how can we work better with it? How can we become more conscious of it within ourselves, that we can actually work with it in our own communities? What would you say about that?
Well, I'm on the inside looking out, because I know that by training astrologers and teaching astrology, and then as a result, people are going out into the world and spreading astrological knowledge, and people are becoming much more self-conscious, self-reflective, self-aware, and that is making them not distrust the politics and the corporations and the religions and the big systems of organization, but making them realize that they're actually more impotent. We used to need to go to the priests for our spiritual solutions when we were tilling in the fields only 100 years ago. But now we all have our own relationship with the divine.
Yeah.
As we get more and more into this big shift that's coming up with Pluto, Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, all changing into masculine signs within a year or two of each other, we're going to see the demise, the gradual slippage of nation states and borders. But instead, I'm worried that the corporate blocks are going to become omnipotent. So this is something.
There's a shadow to everything, isn't there? So it's about us holding our own space and being aware that the opportunities are here for us to ground our spirituality and find our own way forward. I think that, and we talked about this, I think last time, about looking up, remembering the awe of something greater than just our human nonsense.
And this brings us back to the Scorpio-Sag axis, because over the last week or two, I've been advising all of my students, all of my clients, that the next week or two, there's going to be a lot of knee-jerk reactions, a lot of volatility. We're seeing it in minor cases in individual countries. There was an attempted slaughter in Dublin yesterday of children.
Yes, there was, yes.
And there's lots of little things like this going on all around the planet in the last week or so. And this is more stressful than normal, and the new normal is not to be sneered at. I do expect this wave of antagonism to decrease by this time next week and to be gone within 2 weeks' time. But the Mars, as we speak, as we're recording now, the sun moved into Sagittarius something like 36 hours ago. Mars is now at 29 degrees 57, 58. It will move into Sagittarius within an hour of now. So I do suspect that as of this recording onwards, there's going to be some better news. The ceasefire seems to be holding in the Middle East.
Hopefully, but my God, there's so much devastation, which is so Scorpio, isn't it? There's just, I mean, it's beyond words, really.
It's amazing how cruel we can be to each other in the name of my God's better than your God. Yeah. What a stupid way to evolve.
It's not, it really isn't. It's
not intelligent.
No, and it's sort of, we don't need to do that anymore. Surely that we've come to a level of understanding as humanity, but we're still, the dark stuff is still, the Scorpio stuff is still coming up.
Well, you have to ask yourself, at the end of the day, who makes and sells all the guns? It's predominantly the USA, the UK. I'm ashamed to say. You know, we might bleat on about, oh, we've got to stop these dictators, but in the meantime, we're selling them guns, and they're either killing their people or putting them into refugee camps. So they leave those countries and go elsewhere, creating problems all around the world. So when we talk about the floods that are coming, it's not just a flood of water. There's a flood of refugees, and also, I hope, a flood of empathy, compassion, and reconciliation. But I think we've got to stop selling guns.
Yeah. I just feel like the humanity is reaching a critical mass, isn't it? There is this.
Yes.
Well, I think we are on a cusp, that humanity,
Yes.
this is my take on it. And it does feel like it really is. We are on the Scorpio-Sagittarius cusp, because Scorpio,
Yes.
and Sag is the hope, and it's the new way of belief, and the new, the sort of the benevolence of what we can be to each other, and what we can give to each other. And that's just my hope, that there's this, you know, that I think with, you know, with the Sun and Mars having been together, it's a massive trigger, isn't it?
Yes, and take it into a galactic way of looking at things. I'm not a galactic. I'm not one of these galactics. But within the last 20 years, the sun on its orbit around the center of our galaxy has moved further on, so that now the center of our galaxy has apparently moved from 0 degrees Capricorn into 28, 29 degrees of Sagittarius. And the center of our galaxy, galactic center, is called Sagittarius A. So, you know, Sagittarius, it's not all joy, believe me. Sagittarius can be complacent, yes. It can be lazy, and it runs away from any type of commitment as fast as it can. It also brings humor, philosophy, and higher-minded knowledge.
Yes.
And we can aspire to that.
I think it'd be a really good place here to talk about the galactic center, because in my understanding, it's around about 26, 27 degrees Sagittarius. So what would you say to us about that? And also, anyone who's got a planet around about 26, 27 degrees, what does that mean for them, Sagittarius?
I honestly don't think you can infer anything for an individual chart from having planets on the galactic center. But when you look into the sky, you can't see the galactic center because there's a bloody great dust cloud in the way, billions of light years wide. So it's obscured. But if you know where it is, if you know where the cusp between Capricorn and Sagittarius is in the sky at an astronomical level, and you can look at that, then yes, you're looking at galactic center. Bearing in mind that our solar system is expanding away from galactic center, it's orbiting it, but on a spiral. So it's pushing out whilst at the same time spinning round. I don't buy into all of the what I call nonsense around galactic center energy as being beneficial, because there's a bloody great black hole in the middle of our galaxy and nothing can live there unless they're of a different dimension, because the pressure is just so great.
Yeah, I mean, it's meant to be, from astrologers I've been listening to, talking to, about sort of the higher cosmic Christ energy. But I've been a bit more on your side of the coin, going, really?
Prove it.
I don't know.
I can prove how the planets work. I can't prove how galactic center.
I don't know, but it's whatever. But
yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Exactly.
Yeah. It is interesting that, and I just wonder, because if it is at this particular degree in the chart, let's say 26, 27 Sag, is that an energy point then? Does it become an,
I don't see that as particularly relevant, to be honest, personally.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'm wrong, you know, but I don't see it as such. I'm not skeptical about it. I'm cautious in choosing to believe with it.
Yeah. Or it's, I suppose it's sort of this sort of sense of filling people up with more astrological stuff.
Yeah. I want to inspire people to hope for the future, but I want to do it in a way that's grounded and realistic, not airy-fairy.
Yes. Yeah.
Because believing in airy-fairy stuff isn't going to get you anywhere.
And that's not the human journey. The human journey is to get real.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. And
look up and smell the coffee. Yeah.
Got to smell the coffee. And it's that adage of collect water, chop wood, that Buddhist adage. It's hard work and you can't bypass it or go, oh, well, my thing's on whatever, astrologically, and therefore everything's going to be fine. It isn't like that. It's all our lives are hard work. That's why we're here.
This is not a holiday.
It's not.
And if anyone who wants to dispute that, just remember,
it's not.
You volunteered for this. You know, you have to ask yourself, what is your mission statement? Why did you volunteer to come here? What is your purpose? Why are you here? Are you here to drive a fast car and have lots of nice boyfriends and girlfriends and make lots of money? Or are you here to be authentic, have dignity, compassion, and to improve your life and the lives of others and the energy of this planet? And
I also think, you know, you're here to be the lineage breaker, aren't we? We're here to, for me, we're here to break the patterns of the past, of the ancestry. We're here to move things on. And for me, that's, the astrology is just such an important key. How can we do that? Oh, okay. I understand more now.
Right. And also another way of saying exactly the same thing is that our ancestors have sat around their campfires for tens of thousands of years, dreaming of this time. Look at the evolutionary leaps we've made in just the last 20 to 30 years, especially with the technology, and how that's enhanced our spiritual understandings of the cosmos. And look at the rate of acceleration, which is why I agree with you that we are now heading into a nexus point. And this is not some sort of 20 or 30 years distant in the future, which we can shunt off into the future. No, it's in the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
Critical time. We should do something on this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we need, that's what astrology can do, is to help us prepare. Because
absolutely,
when you're prepared, it isn't, there's not the shock or the, oh my God, the panic. It is, okay, we'll just do this one day at a time. And that's
exactly. Come what may, if you do it with dignity and authenticity and a bit of humor, then you'll be fine.
Is there anything else that you would like to say about this cusp of the Scorpio-Sagittarius cusp before we close?
Yeah, one little thing, just one. For us all, look at the cusp of Scorpio and Sagittarius in your personal chart. Look what house it's in. And ask yourself, how have the events of this last couple of weeks, and to a lesser extent, this one coming week, affected you? Have you overreacted? How can you use this energy so that it doesn't use you? And how can you make a difference?
Yeah. And how can you just keep the light? Just stay with the light. That's how I look at it. Acknowledging the dark, but not buying into it.
If you can't work with the dark, don't work with the light. They're equal and opposite.
Yeah.
Dark is not negative. 29 Scorpio is not evil. It's not nasty. There's nothing dodgy about it. It's dark.
Yeah.
0 degrees Sagittarius is light. They're right next to each other. It's yin yang, and you can't have one without the other. Celebrate them both.
That's a lovely place to end today. So, and we'll see each other next time. And thank
We
you all
will.
for listening, and see you soon. Take care.